If you really love me, you won't have a problem signing a contract, right? That's what Claire said. Her voice was too calm. We were sitting in a small cafe just outside Seattle, rain drizzling against the window, the world outside blurring into a watercolor of grey and gold streetlights. She slid a stapled packet across the table. 5 pages, neatly formatted, double-spaced. Title at the top, Love Contract between Claire Thompson and Ethan Miller. At first, I laughed. I thought it was one of her jokes. She had a dry sense of humor, sharp and clever, the kind that tested people. But when I looked up, she wasn't smiling. Her grey eyes were serious, still, like steel under soft light. That's when I realized this wasn't a joke. This was a line in the sand. Go on, she said softly. Read it. I worked hard on it. So I did. Clause 1. You must text me good morning and good night every day. Clause 2. You cannot cancel a date without a valid reason. Clause 3. When I'm working or reading, you have to respect my space and stay quiet. Clause 4. If we argue, you can't walk away. You have to stay and talk until I'm calm. Clause 5. You must remain loyal, no female friends, no secrets, no half-dash truths. By the time I got to the second page, my chest felt tight. Not because I was angry, but because I understood. I understood that this was what fear looked like when it tried to disguise itself as order. Claire, I said quietly, don't you think this is a bit much? She looked up. Her voice didn't waver. I just need things to be clear, Ethan. I'm tired of guessing, of wondering where I stand. If you sign this, I'll finally know that you're serious, that you won't hurt me like the others did. I could have argued. I could have told her that love isn't supposed to be written in bullet points, but something in her eyes, something fragile, stopped me. You see, 2 years ago, Claire's ex cheated on her with a co-worker. Since then, she's been building walls out of rules, convincing herself that control could replace trust and me. I didn't want to be another man who broke her, so I took the pen, and with one slow breath, I signed my name. The sound of the pen scratching against the paper felt heavier than it should have. Claire smiled softly, folded the contract, and slid it into her bag like it was an official document. Thank you, she said. You have no idea how much this means to me. She reached across the table, touched my hand. Her fingers were cold. That night, as I drove home through the rain, the sound of the windshield wipers echoed in rhythm with my thoughts. Streetlights shimmered on the wet asphalt, and I couldn't stop replaying her words. If you really love me, you won't have a problem signing. But love isn't supposed to need signatures. And as the rain fell harder, I couldn't shake the feeling that I hadn't just signed a piece of paper. I'd signed away a part of myself. It started small, so small that, at first, I thought everything was fine. Claire didn't shove the contract in my face or recite it line by line. She wasn't aggressive. She was subtle, the kind of subtle that slowly tightens around you. One quiet day at a time, until you realize you can't move. If I forgot to text her good morning, my phone would buzz by noon. Rough morning, she'd write, not angry, just a soft tone laced with disappointment, the kind that makes you feel guilty without knowing why. If I ever mentioned grabbing coffee with a coworker, especially a female one, she'd pause, smile faintly, and say, just remember what we agreed on. That phrase, what we agreed on, slowly replaced, I love you. And I didn't even notice when it happened. Every time she said it, I found myself apologizing, even when I hadn't done anything wrong. Then the little things started. She'd come over and help organize my apartment, move my books, refold my shirts, replace the candles I liked with ones that smelled cleaner. She said she just wanted to make my space feel calmer. But over time, it started feeling less like my space and more like hers. Still, I told myself it was fine, that this was how love looked when someone was trying to feel safe, that maybe when you've been hurt badly enough, control feels like the only way to breathe. 3 weeks after I signed that paper, the cracks started showing. That night, I came home late from work. There'd been a power outage at the office, and I'd stayed to help fix the servers. When I opened my apartment door, she was already there, sitting on the couch. Laptop open, the contract printed beside her. "Hey," I said carefully. "You didn't tell me you were coming over." "I texted you," she said quietly. "Twice." I checked my phone to unread messages. I hadn't seen them. "Claire, I was busy. You could have texted," she interrupted. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was cold. "You promised." That was the first time I truly felt the contract. Not as words on paper, but as something in the air. A tension, invisible but heavy. It sat between us, turning love into an obligation. We argued that night. No yelling, no slammed doors. Just two people sitting across from each other, both exhausted from trying to prove they were right. When Claire finally cried, I held her, apologized, promised I'd try harder. I'm not even sure what I was apologizing for, maybe just for breaking the quiet. When she fell asleep on my shoulder, I looked down at the stack of papers still lying on the coffee table. The top page was slightly bent, right where my signature was. I ran my fingers over it, tracing the ink. And in that moment, I realized something. I was losing something I couldn't name. It wasn't my freedom. It was me. I used to think if I loved her enough, she'd finally feel safe. But the more I tried, the more I felt myself disappearing slowly, quietly into a version of love that cared more about rules than hearts. And the worst part, somewhere deep down, I'd already started to fear her. After that night, things between Claire and me were never the same. On the surface, everything looked fine. We still went out for dinner, still held hands on the street, still said I love you before going to bed. But somewhere deep down, something invisible had started to change. Something small, slow, silent, like a crack in glass, thin at first, but spreading a little more every day. Claire started to appear in every corner of my life. Not in a loud or invasive way, but in a quiet, calculated one. She gradually learned my work schedule, my lunch breaks, my meetings, even the hour I left the office. She'd call at just the right time, those in-between moments when I was free. As if she had built a timetable for both of us. If I didn't pick up, a few minutes later, my phone would buzz again. Where are you? Why aren't you answering? At first, I thought it was sweet. Who wouldn't like to be cared for that much? But slowly, those messages turned into something else, quiet control. Where I went, what I did, who I met, she wanted to know it all. One time, I had lunch with an old college friend, Jake. We used to be close. But ever since I started dating Claire, I hadn't seen him much. We'd just sat down when my phone buzzed. A message from Claire. Who are you with? I quickly replied, with Jake, my college buddy. You know him. Less than a minute later, she called. Her voice was soft, but something about it made my spine tighten. Is Jake there alone? Yeah, it's just us. Okay, I was just asking. But the rest of that lunch, I couldn't relax. I felt like I was doing something wrong, even though I wasn't. Jake looked at me, frowning. Are you okay, man? You seem ... tense. I forced a laugh. Yeah, just tired. He sighed. Look, I don't know what's going on, but if someone makes you ask for permission just to live your life, that's not love, man. That sentence stayed with me the entire day. But that night, when I saw Claire standing in my kitchen, hair tied up, wearing an apron, smiling softly, my heart softened again. I told myself, she's just scared of losing me, and so I kept giving in. I saw my friends less, stopped going out after work. Even my job started to suffer. Every late meeting or overtime shift had to be reported, like I was an employee in my own relationship contract. One night, while cleaning my desk, I found an old folder, the one where I kept the copy of the contract she'd made me sign. I opened it again. Below the line that said, "Commit to absolute loyalty," there was an extra handwritten sentence. Any violation will be considered the end of love. I didn't remember signing under that line, but my signature was there, right below it. I looked at the faded ink and wondered, am I holding on to this love? Or is it holding on to me? Outside, it was raining again. Seattle was wet that season, as if the whole city had learned how to endure, and I realized I was doing the same thing. I didn't know if Claire was truly happy, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't. I started asking questions, not out loud, but in small, quiet ways. Before, I used to stay silent whenever Claire mentioned what we agreed on. Now, every time she said it, I'd stop, look her straight in the eye, and ask, "What exactly do you mean by that?" It was a simple question, but it changed the air between us. Claire never answered right away. She'd smile, that soft, measured smile, and say, "I just want you to understand boundaries. You know that." That's when I realized I'd started to test things, the way an animal in a cage nudges the bars, just to see how strong they are. I began silencing my phone, turning off location sharing, having lunch with Jake without telling her in advance. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't following a plan, and my heart beat faster, not from fear, but from a small flash of freedom. When I sat down to eat, that lightness came rushing back. Jake was laughing about some old college story, and I laughed too, really laughed. But then I saw my phone screen light up. Claire's name, her messages piling up, and that brief moment of air vanished. That night, she asked casually, "How was your day?" I told her the truth. Fine. I had lunch with Jake. She paused. Then, calmly, "I think we need to talk." It wasn't a fight. It was more like an interrogation, slow, patient, but piercing. She listed everything that was off. How I didn't message enough. How I didn't prioritize her. How I wasn't present. I tried to explain that I needed space for work, for friends, for myself. She looked at me like I'd just confessed a crime. "Space," she repeated. "I think you're running away." That's when I realized there was no winning. Every word I said became another piece of evidence, proof that I was breaking the contract. And the contract, that stapled set of papers, had quietly become the measure of my morality. After that night, I started keeping notes, not to fight back, at least not yet, just for myself. Dates, times, messages, the things she said. I took screenshots. Every note was a piece of the puzzle, and slowly the picture started to form. This wasn't love anymore. It was a system carefully built, perfectly maintained. Then one night, Claire went out to meet a friend from yoga. I checked our shared calendar, something she had suggested for safety. I scrolled through her events, meditation class, mentorship calls, wellness seminars, and then, tucked in the corner, I found one note she forgot to delete and address. A downtown bar. A time my chest tightened. Not from jealousy, not exactly, but from something deeper. A realization that the crack between us was spreading faster than I thought. I marked it down. Note, check later. I didn't confront her when she came home. I just watched. The perfume on her coat was different. Her schedule shifted in small ways. Calls came and went faster. Part of me wanted to demand the truth, to make her admit whatever it was. But another part of me, the quieter, more careful part, had learned something. If I pushed too fast, she'd twist it back, turn it into tears, and I'd end up apologizing again. So I waited. I planned late at night. I thought about the final line, that invisible boundary where people finally decide to stand up. Is it when all the signs pile up? When love turns into a cage disguised as safety? Or when you finally look in the mirror and don't recognize yourself anymore? I didn't have the answer yet, but I knew I was getting ready. I called Jake, didn't say much. Just asked if he could take a look at a few messages, maybe reach out to that lawyer friend of his. I wasn't trying to start a fight. I just needed options, proof, a way out if it came to that. Claire didn't know about any of it. The notes, the calls, the quiet web I was starting to spin. She still smiled, still asked about my day, still brewed my favorite tea, and I smiled back. But deep inside, something colder was forming, a quiet determination. If this love couldn't be free, then I'd have to find my way out carefully, quietly, and on my terms. And one foggy morning, when I opened my email and saw an event notification she'd accidentally left public, I saw a man's name I didn't recognize. That was the first clear trace. A name, the start of questions I could no longer ignore. I took a deep breath, placed my hands on the desk, and told myself, stay calm, watch, record, prepare. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. But I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't keep living in uncertainty anymore. The name in the email stayed with me all morning. Michael, 7:30 p.m., Blue Note Bar. A simple line, cold and clean, left visible on our shared calendar. I didn't want to believe the worst. Part of me tried to explain it away. Maybe a business contact, maybe someone from her meditation group. But then I remembered how she'd reacted when I had lunch with Jake. The suspicion, the calls, the control. And suddenly, every excuse felt hollow. I drifted through work that day, half present. Every sound startled me. Every phone vibration made my heart jump. By evening, I did something I'd sworn I'd never do. I followed her, not to get revenge, not out of anger, but because I needed the truth, not her version of it, but my own eyes on it. At 7:20, I parked a block away from Blue Note Bar. The rain hadn't stopped. Droplets clung to the windshield, reflecting the soft blue glow of the neon sign. I turned off the headlights and waited in silence. 7:28. The door opened. Claire walked in beige coat, hair tied up, calm as ever. A moment later, a man appeared, tall, brown hair, mid-30s, a familiar ease in his expression. They didn't hug. No overt gestures. But when she looked at him, that smile, that gentle gaze, I recognized it. It was the same look she once reserved for me, back when things were still whole. I sat still, gripping the steering wheel. Not out of rage, but from something quieter, heavier, loss. Like I was watching myself disappear from her life, piece by piece. I didn't get out. I just watched. 8 o'clock, 8:20, 8:45. They were still there, talking, laughing, leaning closer at times. When they finally left, she didn't even glance around. She walked beside him toward the parking lot, head tilted, carefree. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. I already knew, on the drive home, Seattle was drenched in rain. The streets shimmered under the streetlights, like an endless mirror reflecting everything I didn't want to see. I didn't play music. Just let the wipers move back and forth, steady, rhythmic, marking the tempo of my thoughts. When I got home, I sat in the dark for a long time. On the table was the folder, the love contract. I opened to the last page, to my signature, and realized I'd been keeping promises to a contract she'd already broken. The pain didn't hit like a wave. It crept in, quiet, steady, like the rain outside. I picked up my phone and typed, "Claire, I think we need to talk." But this time, not about the contract. I didn't send it. I stared at the message, then set the phone down. If I sent it, she'd twist it, turn it into guilt, into another apology that I'd end up giving. Instead, I opened my laptop and began transcribing everything I'd been recording over the past weeks. Messages, screenshots, times, small details, emotions. Each line felt like a breadcrumb trail back to the truth, painful but undeniable. When I was done, I saved the file under the name "Before the Contract Ends." I didn't know what would come next, a confrontation, a breakup, or silence. But for the first time in months, I felt something close to power, the ability to choose. That night, I fell asleep to the sound of rain. No dreams, just one thought circling in my mind. Tomorrow, I won't let anyone write the rules for my love again. The next morning, it was still raining. Seattle never really stops raining. It just changes its rhythm. Like the city itself is trying to wash away everything that's worn out and old. I woke up early, made a cup of coffee, and stood by the window. I hadn't dreamed, but my mind felt clearer than it had in months. No anger, no confusion, just a strange stillness, like standing at the edge of something, knowing you're finally ready to step over it. Claire came out of the bedroom, her hair messy, a thin robe wrapped loosely round her shoulders. She smiled softly, just like every other morning. "You're up early. Something on your mind?" I set my cup down. "I think we need to talk." She froze for a second, but her smile stayed, again. "Ethan, you're overthinking things." I pulled out a chair and gestured for her to sit. "This isn't an argument. I just need clarity." Her eyes narrowed slightly, the look of someone who's just heard the low rumble before a storm. "You're scaring me," she said quietly. "What's going on?" I turned my laptop toward her. On the screen was the file I'd created last night, Before the Contract Ends. I opened it, line after line, dates, messages, screenshots, notes. I spoke calmly. "This is everything I've been recording. Not to accuse you, just to remind myself of how I slowly forgot who I was." She stared at the screen, her face pale but her tone sharp. "So you're spying on me now? That's what this is. You think this is love? I took a slow breath. No. This is what holding on to sanity looks like. Silence. Heavy, thick. She stood up, crossing her arms. I have no idea what you're implying. I scrolled to the email, the one with the calendar entry. Michael, 7:30 p.m., Blue Note Bar. I just want to ask one question, I said. Who is he? Her face didn't change immediately. Just a pause, then a small, practiced smile, half sweet, half condescending. You followed me. I read something you left public. I have nothing to hide. Then tell me the truth. She looked straight at me, her voice smooth, almost rehearsed. He's a former co-worker. We just met to talk about a project. A project, I repeated. At 7:30, in a bar. This time, she didn't answer. The room went silent, so still I could hear the clock ticking, slow and deliberate, like it was counting down. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just looked at her, really looked, until that smile faded. Then I said, quietly, I signed your contract. I tried to live by it, every term, every boundary. But last night, I realized something. Love doesn't need a signature. It needs honesty. And that's gone. She stepped closer, her voice trembling. Ethan, you can't just walk away like this. I shook my head. I'm not walking away. I'm just withdrawing my signature. She reached for my hand, her voice breaking. You're misunderstanding everything. Everything I did was because I love you. I looked down at her hand, the same hand that once made me feel safe, now felt like a chain. No, Claire, you did it because you're afraid, and love can't survive inside fear. She started crying, quietly, her tears falling like a reflex she'd practiced before. But this time, they didn't move me. I wasn't angry, just tired. Tired of playing the part of a man trying to save something that had already died. I stood up and walked to the door. I'll stay somewhere else for a few days. If you ever want to talk honestly, I'll listen. But if you still see love as a contract, don't send me another draft. She didn't move. Just stood there, crying. The sound barely audible over the ticking clock. The door closed behind me, not with a slam, but a quiet final click that seemed to echo for miles. Outside, the rain had stopped. The sky stretched open, silver grey and clean, like a blank page. And for the first time in months, I could finally breathe again. I left the apartment the next morning. Seattle had sunshine that day. Rare, clear. Like a gift the sky gave to those trying to start over. I didn't bring much, just a suitcase of clothes. My laptop and a thin folder containing a copy of the love contract. I didn't know why I still kept it. Maybe because it was proof that sometimes love doesn't end with an explosion, but with a signature. I rented a small apartment in Queen Anne, overlooking the lake. At night, the lights reflected on the water, like thousands of shattered glass pieces. Beautiful but sharp. Every time I looked at them, I was reminded of the days we had, beautiful but painful. In the beginning, I couldn't do much. Just made coffee, read a few pages, then sat still for hours. I learned to get used to silence, something I once feared, but now found strangely peaceful. Sometimes I'd get a message from Claire. No more commands, no more where are you. Just a few short lines, sometimes empty, sometimes soft. I miss you. If possible, I'd like to talk. I read them, but didn't reply. Not out of anger, but because I knew some conversations only take you back to where you started. And I didn't want to go back anymore. I started writing. Not about her, but about myself. About the boundaries, the things I once let others define for me. Each line felt like cleansing, like a reminder. True love doesn't need a contract or promises on paper. It needs trust, freedom, and the courage to let go when you can no longer be yourself. One afternoon, I went to a small coffee shop down the street, the one with glass windows facing the park. There was a girl sitting at the opposite table, brown hair, wool coat, focused on writing in her notebook. When she looked up, our eyes met by accident. No sparks, no movie soundtrack playing in my head. Just a brief, warm, real glance. She smiled, and I nodded back. That was all. But in that moment, I realized, sometimes, love begins not with a promise, but with peace within yourself. That night, I opened an old file before the contract ends. I read the first few lines again, then scrolled to the bottom. I added one new line in bold. After everything, I choose freedom. I saved it, then closed my laptop. Outside, the wind brushed past the window, carrying the scent of the lake and the faint hum of the city fading away. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Relief. No more contracts. No more clauses. Just me and a new chapter, unwritten, but this time, no one else will sign it for me.